Welcome back to Tell Me More for Run Radio. I'm Trina Wilcox. My guest today, Michelle Cameron with Simplicity Way Professional Organizing. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
I do like to be organized, but I also, the thought of doing it is overwhelming and makes certain people panic. I take it
Yes.
you're not one of those that panics, or have you in the past?
I think that I'm naturally an organized person. But that's not to say that my life has never, like, my spaces have never been unorganized. And so I think that it's easier to deal with others' disorganization than it is with my own disorganization. So yeah.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
What made you want to do that? Go in and help people organize? Because, like I said, for most of us, we're lucky to get our own drawer clean, let alone take on something for someone else.
Yeah. So I used to be a teacher. And so back in 2020, when COVID happened, we went to spring break and never came back for the rest of the fourth quarter. And I had a lot of extra time. And at that point in my life, I knew in the next year that my children were all going to be leaving our home and I was going to become an empty nester. And so I took lots of walks and had lots of time to reflect. And I'm a Christian, so I spent a lot of time just praying, like, Lord, what does this next year look like? Kind of that whole when your children leave the nest, like, I don't even know what it is that I like to do or what I want to do because I've been a mom for so long. And just in reflecting, realized what I liked to do was organizing. I had helped a friend probably 20 years previously whose home was completely out of control. And she was sweet enough to let me come in and we just went through her whole house and we organized it. And seeing the transformation in her space, but more importantly, like I could physically see a transformation in her, like the weight just lifting off her shoulders and being happy to be in her home again and to have it functioning. And so that was just kind of something in reflecting that I was like, wow, that was like one of the highlights of my life. And in between that point and where I was in March of 2020, there had been a lot of life lived. And there had been seasons where I had found myself in situations where life was a dumpster fire and I was not in a place to get myself where I needed to be. And so there were people who came alongside me and they didn't judge me and they loved me through what I was going through and helped me to get to a better place. And so recognizing that I had this quirky gift of organizing, just the way that my brain worked, and then paired with mental health and just that internal what's going on internally can often manifest itself externally in our spaces. And so the passion behind it truly is to help people get to a better place so that they can enjoy living and focus on living again. So
Kind of talk about that. It's not the first time I've heard that there is a relationship, the correlation between the clutter and how our headspace is.
Yeah. So goodness, the possessions that we have, a lot of them have emotions tied to them. And so you can walk into your closet and you can see something that no longer fits and is screaming at you that, you're never going to lose the weight, you're never, or something that still has the tags on it that you can't return, that you spent a lot of money. And so there's that kind of internal dialogue, that comes along, pictures, many different things in our home. And we just don't realize it because we just go through life so quickly. And then another way that our internal and our external are connected is that when we're struggling and we don't have the energy to put things where they belong, or we become overwhelmed by the quantity of things that we have, then we just don't have that energy or the vision to be able to do a reset, is what I call it, where you can get yourself to a place where life is functioning well. And so it's like you leave your home, you come home for the day, walk in, and if it's just disorganization, then that again, it's just like this loop that plays, and it feeds into your internal, like, oh my gosh, I can't even. So that is where I see the internal and the external relationship of our
What
things.
what are some things people can do just to make a very small step in getting decluttered or organized?
Right, right. So a lot of times it's just so overwhelming that people don't even know where to start.
Mhm.
And so I say pick someplace small.
Okay.
And so that can be as small as like a drawer. It can be as small as something like a part of a counter space, um, and it can be a small space and it can be a small amount of time. Maybe just like maybe all you have is 5 minutes. Like I can give 5 minutes to this space every day, and just keep working at that. Because what happens is as spaces become opened up, then I truly believe, I don't know this like scientifically, but I truly believe there's like endorphins that are released, and you build momentum and confidence in that, oh, wow, look, I can do this. And so I always say start with a small space, small amount of time, and make sure it's not something that has a lot of emotion tied to it. Because if you try to start with something that has a lot of emotion tied to it, then that's overwhelming in and of itself.
So, what are some of the services that you provide?
So I provide decluttering. That's if you have like too much stuff,
Okay.
and you need to downsize what you have. So um, and that is something that we do together. And then organization. So typically you declutter and then you organize. Some people just, things have gotten out of whack and they don't necessarily have too many things. Their space just isn't organized. So I also do just organization. And I do everything from a pantry to the whole house. I can do offices. Like I said, I was a teacher, so classrooms. Um, a teacher's time is their most valuable resource. And so a disorganized classroom really eats away at that resource. And so that is something that I do. And my price is discounted with classrooms because teachers, they aren't the highest paid
Right.
profession, out there. I don't know if I said offices. Um, and when I say offices, I'm talking about like your physical items, not talking about like uh workflow and that type of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, so those are the spaces that I work in. I also do packing, unpacking. Um, when someone loses someone and they inherit a bunch of stuff, that's a huge process. So I walk with people through that process. Downsizing, I became an empty nester. That was like a whole new
Hmm.
world. And so downsizing from that. So just a myriad of things like that.
I feel like sometimes there's confusion between organization and decluttering and minimalist living.
Mm-hmm.
How do you separate the two? And do you do both?
So I think that there's like, I think minimalism is kind of on a spectrum, is how I
Mhm.
see it. And so what looks like minimalism for one person may not necessarily be minimalism for another person. I was talking with an organizer yesterday, and I thought this was really, really a good way to look at it, was that minimalism is like the least amount of items that you can function with. And so, like I said, that looks different for everyone. And I am huge. There's not a one size fits all.
Mhm.
I always tell my clients that if I come in and I organize your space the way that it makes sense to me, I'm going to leave. You're going to be in your house functioning, and it may not work for you because
Mhm.
your brain may look at things differently. And so many times as I'm working with my clients, it's like, does this make sense for you? Where would you think to look at this for this, and so it's very much tailored to them. So back to the minimalism, I think that I like the idea of it, but there are things that there's decor items that
Mhm.
everybody's different. um so I think that as long as your stuff is not to the quantity that it hinders you being able to live and function fully, then that may be your minimalism. But I do believe that the less stuff you have, the more free your mindset, because you don't have as much, like, if you need to clean up your house, there's not as much stuff to pick up. There's not as many decisions to be made when you go into your closet. And I think with the day and age that we live in, there's so many decisions that we have to make, that by cutting down the things that we do have, um, and making sure that the things that we do have we value and we use, then that also frees up the mental capacity that we have.
Yeah. You have less to organize, which can be helpful,
Mhm.
but you don't have to be a minimalist to get organized.
Exactly, exactly.
What are
Yeah.
some mistakes that we're making that would make our lives easier just every day as just
Yes.
individuals that would like to keep things more organized along the way?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. I think one thing is to make sure that you're not bringing more into your home than what is leaving your home. I really think with COVID, and because so many of my clients, they have a lot of stuff left over from COVID. Um, and I think Amazon, just that impulsive buying, and continually, I see a lot of that.
Okay.
Um, oh, I think recognizing that maybe focusing more on experiences rather than things. I had a client I was working with these last couple weeks, and we've gone through her children's toys, and then their basement was all toys. And she was saying that even in just in that short time of those things coming out, she said, we decided that instead of buying the kids more toys, she said that we're going to take that money and we're going to spend time together as a family. And I thought that was, really great. Um, Holidays are a great time when, like, if there's birthdays, if things come in, um, going through and seeing, well, what can we give, to kind of equal out that stuff ratio. Um, I think, one thing is, if you do want to organize, like if you're like, I want to tackle my garage, I would say find a friend, because a friend, someone who's not going to shame you,
Yes.
and someone who will be honest with you.
Yeah.
Um, Finding a friend to do that with is like a huge thing. So, yeah, so just simple things like that.
It's like we get embarrassed by it, but we all
Oh,
do it. And it's kind of like
mhm.
the whole got to clean the house before someone comes to clean the house. You know, you don't want
Oh yeah.
anybody to know what it's like, but you're you know that we all have that in us and it's okay. We shouldn't beat ourselves up over it.
Right.
So when that what's a good check-in for us? Because like you're kind of saying it sneaks up on people at different times. How
Mhm.
do we keep consistent with keeping things neat and organized and
Mhm.
decluttered?
Mhm. I think it goes back to you have to do what makes sense to you.
Mhm.
And at the same time, if it's more than you in your house, you have to be respectful that the other people in your house may not think like you do.
Oh, yes.
And so trying to be mindful of that when you set up how your spaces are going to work. Um, for instance, children oftentimes are inputting their stuff up. They're not going to do as well with like a bunch of little categories of things.
Yeah.
They're going to be more like, here's a big bucket, here's a big
Yes.
bucket or basket, and just this is what you need to do. And with children also, taking the time to teach them um where things go and making it easy for them so that they understand the expectation and they have something in place that makes sense to them. And so, like I think about like pantries and like putting it together in a way where it's accessible and that everybody that's using the pantry is going you try to make it as successful as possible. If you know someone's not going to put something exactly where it belongs, then you may need to have something bigger that's just going to be a catch.
Good
So,
tip. Good tip. All right. So when we feel like we can't do it ourselves, how do we get a hold of you?
I have, you can call me. My number is 417-300-7500, or you can go to my website, which is simplicity-way.com. And it has all my information of what I do, my pricing, and then it has a contact form and my email on there.
Very good. Well, thank you for sharing and come back anytime.
Oh, thank you so much, Trina. This was fun.
Thanks.